The eyes open in the dark. Before the feet even touch the floor, the machinery is already running. There is no pause between the end of sleep and the beginning of the demands. The temperature of the air hits the skin. Instantly there is a judgment. It is too cold, or it is too warm. It is a microscopic rejection of what is actually happening, and it is the first expenditure of the day. Sound enters the room. A car passing outside, a door closing down the hall. Every single sound is measured, weighed, and categorized. An annoyance, a distraction, something that should not be there. This happens before a single conscious decision is made. Then the images begin to play. A conversation from yesterday loops endlessly. A mistake is remembered and the stomach tightens. A meeting planned for tomorrow is imagined and the jaw clenches. The body is resting in a quiet room, but the physical frame is already fighting invisible battles. Nobody chooses this. Nobody wakes up and decides to be immediately overwhelmed by the fabric of the bed sheets or the tone of an email. It runs on its own, like an automated program running quietly in the background. Pleasant, unpleasant, acceptable, unacceptable. Every second of the day is sliced into these tiny judgments. Notice how this feels in the physical frame. The shoulders sit a little higher than they need to. The breath is shallow, caught somewhere in the upper chest. There is a constant, low-grade bracing for impact. A door opens to the outside. The environment changes and the reactions multiply. Someone walks too slowly on the pavement. A sudden spike of heat flashes behind the eyes. A car drifts into the wrong lane. A heavy wave of anger rises, demanding justice for a completely ordinary mistake. Why does a stranger's minor error feel like a personal attack? Because the system is always on edge, always waiting for something to push against. Look outside a window. Rain begins to fall. Instantly, the mood drops. The weather is taken as a personal inconvenience. The sky is simply doing what the sky does. But the reaction insists that the sky is wrong. Energy is spent being angry at water falling from clouds. A chair is pulled up to a desk. The backrest presses against the spine and the immediate thought is dissatisfaction. A slight ache appears in a muscle, or a faint headache begins to form. Instead of simply noticing a sensation in the body, a massive story is constructed. Frustration that the physical frame is failing. Fear about what the pain might mean. Anger that this is happening on a busy day. The physical pain is small, but the heavy layer of rejection placed on top of it is exhausting. A drink touches the tongue. It is slightly too bitter, and that tiny bitterness is recorded as a failure. Nothing is allowed to just be what it is. Everything must be evaluated. A screen lights up. Information pours in from 1,000 different directions. A headline appears. Instantly, a side is chosen. A few words are read, and total agreement washes over the chest. Then, one opposing word appears, and the entire perspective flips. Agreement turns to absolute disgust in a fraction of a second. There is no middle ground. There is no space to hold two different ideas at once. It is all or nothing, like a heavy switch being thrown back and forth over and over again. A voice speaks across a room. The sentence carries a slight edge. Perhaps they are carrying their own invisible weight, but that is not seen. What is seen is a threat. The vision instantly narrows. The entire history with this person vanishes, replaced entirely by this one tense moment. All the good they have done is erased. They are now the enemy. The attention locks onto their words, replaying them, twisting them, building a massive fortress of defense against a minor comment. When fear arrives, notice what happens to the room. A message arrives about an uncertain future. A threat to a job, or a relationship, or a bank account. Suddenly, the walls seem to close in. It becomes impossible to see the long timeline of a life. Vision becomes incredibly small. Everything is filtered through the tight, burning lens of panic. The physical world is still there, but it cannot be accessed. Even when nothing is happening, the background machinery is working. Sitting in an empty waiting room, there is no immediate threat. There is no problem to solve. But the quiet is uncomfortable. So the attention begins to invent things to react to. A clock is checked. There are 10 minutes left before an appointment. Those 10 minutes could be quiet. They could be completely empty. But the anticipation of the next event fills the space entirely. The heart beats a little faster. The breathing becomes a little more shallow. Energy is being burned for an event that has not even started yet. A conversation that has not happened yet is rehearsed. Arguments are won against empty air. Defenses are built for attacks that may never arrive. The energy is spent just the same. Or the focus shifts backwards. An event from 10 years ago is pulled out of the dark. A moment of embarrassment. A moment of perceived failure. The body responds as if it is happening right now. The skin flushes. The heartbeat quickens. The same energy is drained, spent on a ghost. Walking down a brightly lit aisle in a store. Hundreds of objects demanding attention. The cart in front is moving too slowly. A sudden, sharp irritation flares up in the throat. Why are they in the way? Why are they doing this deliberately? An entire narrative is constructed around a stranger looking at a shelf. Energy is spent fighting an imaginary battle in the middle of a grocery store. When the exhaustion becomes too much, an attempt is made to fix the outside world. A different chair is purchased. A different brand of coffee is chosen. A different city is moved to. There is a deep belief that if the environment is finally perfect, the reacting will stop. If the people are finally kind enough, if the bank account is finally large enough, then the tension will relax. Then the breathing will deepen, but the new chair eventually feels stiff. The new city becomes annoying. The new situation reveals its flaws, and the exact same cycle of judgment begins again. Because the friction was never in the chair. The friction was in the mechanism that constantly demands the chair be different. Every sound, every sight, every smell, every texture, it all flows in continuously without a single break. And it is all caught by this invisible net of preference. A song plays in a cafe. Instantly it is labeled good or bad, nostalgic or great. There is no simply hearing the notes. There is only the immediate categorization of the noise. The temperature fluctuates by a single degree. The skin senses it. And immediately, a tiny layer of dissatisfaction is added to the moment. The desire for it to be warmer. The desire for it to be cooler. Multiply that microscopic rejection by 10,000. 10,000 tiny rejections of the present moment every single day. That is what empties the tank. That is what hollows out the frame. There is an illusion of control in all of this reacting. A quiet belief that if something is judged harshly enough, it might change. If the traffic is hated with enough intensity, perhaps it will move faster. If the past is regretted with enough pain, perhaps it will undo itself. But the traffic remains exactly as it is. The past remains locked in place. The only thing that changes is the amount of energy left to get through the afternoon. When the weight of this constant movement becomes unbearable, a distraction is sought. Something sweet. Something entertaining. Something to numb the constant vibrating tension. The distraction feels like relief, but it is just another reaction. Another attempt to fix the discomfort of the present moment by consuming something else. A screen is endlessly scrolled through, looking for a temporary escape. But every image on the screen demands another reaction. A judgment about someone's appearance, a flash of envy about someone's location, a spike of fear about a news event. The escape is just another arena for the exact same exhaustion. Food is consumed not for hunger, but to force a different feeling into the body. A heavy meal to push down the anxiety. A sugary drink to artificially spike the energy that was lost to anger hours ago. Chemicals are used to forcefully relax the tension that has been building since dawn. The body becomes a dumping ground for attempts to fix the invisible drain. The sun goes down, and the day ends. The physical frame is placed onto a bed, and there is a profound, crushing emptiness. A bone-deep exhaustion that sleep never seems to fully cure. Why is there no strength left? No bricks were carried. No physical labor was performed. Yet the tank is completely empty. The tank is empty because the doors were left wide open all day. Energy poured out in 1,000 different directions, spilled over a slow walker, been wasted on a cold cup of coffee, been burned up in a brief flash of anger at a screen. Every single judgment cost something, and every single reaction carried a price. And because this is never noticed, it will happen again tomorrow. The alarm will sound, the feet will touch the floor, and the exact same automatic machinery will start running. The reserves will begin to drain before the morning is even over, not because of the events of the day, but because of the endless invisible friction of resisting them. Every single moment evaluated, every single moment reacted to. And because the tank is completely empty, the system looks for an exit. The continuous friction of the day leaves a burning residue in the chest. There is a profound need for the noise to just stop, for the endless measuring and judging to be put on pause. A room is entered at the end of the day. The door is closed. The quiet should be a relief, but the quiet is deafening. The machinery of the mind is still spinning at full speed, but suddenly there is nothing for it to push against. The silence feels dangerous. A familiar pulling sensation begins. It starts as a faint whisper in the background of the body, a subtle restlessness in the hands, a slight dryness in the mouth. The attention drifts toward a known comfort, a screen, a specific food, a glass waiting to be filled. In the morning, a firm promise was made, a resolution that today would be different. But the morning was a lifetime ago. The morning did not have to carry the weight of 1,000 tiny rejections. Now, the evening demands compensation. The mind begins to negotiate. It builds a brilliant, flawless argument for why the promise should be broken. It says the day was uniquely difficult. It says a small indulgence is deserved. It says this will be the very last time. Notice how the relief arrives before the action is even taken. The moment the decision is made to surrender, the tension drops. The fight is over. The white flag is waved. The shoulders finally come down. A deep breath is finally taken. Just the anticipation of the habit is enough to soothe the nervous system, because certainty has returned. The outside world is entirely unpredictable. People are unpredictable. The future is a massive, towering unknown. But this sequence is known perfectly. The exact sequence of reaching, opening, consuming. It is a perfectly predictable ritual in an unstable universe. It requires zero effort. There is no risk of failure. The outcome is guaranteed. A package is opened. A screen is unlocked. The first moment of contact is pure electricity. A massive flood of artificial warmth washes over the brain. The sharp edges of the room soften. The lingering irritation from the afternoon begins to dissolve into a thick, comfortable fog. For a few seconds or a few minutes, everything is fine. The pain is successfully muted. This is why it feels so undeniably good. It is an immediate, foolproof escape hatch from the uncomfortable present moment. The senses are flooded with a synthetic intensity, loud colors, heavy flavors, dramatic sounds. The volume of the distraction is turned up so high that nothing else can be heard. The subtle, quiet aches of the body are drowned out. The low-grade anxiety of existence is temporarily buried under a mountain of sensation. It feels like comfort. But watch closely as the minutes pass. The initial peak of pleasure is incredibly brief. Almost immediately, the feeling begins to decay. The second taste is not as vibrant as the first. The third is even less. By the 10th, the taste is barely registering at all. The eyes drag across a feed of endless images, but they are no longer really seeing them. The mind has gone entirely blank. The action has become completely mechanical, an automatic loop running on its own invisible track. The hand reaches, pulls, consumes. Reaches, pulls, consumes. There is a strange, hollow feeling of being a passenger in a body that is acting on its own. The pilot has left the seat. The machinery has been handed over to an automatic program. It is doing the job of keeping the void filled so the silence cannot creep back in. And it is not just physical consumption. Habits of the mind offer the exact same intoxicating relief. A memory of someone who caused harm rises to the surface. The chest tightens. Instead of letting the thought pass, the attention grabs it. It pulls it close and begins to feed on it. The argument is replayed in the dark theatre of the mind. New lines are invented. Better comebacks are delivered. Resentment flares up, hot and bright. And underneath the bitterness, there is a twisted, undeniable pleasure. Why does it feel so good to mentally fight an old enemy? Because it feels like power. When the baseline feeling is exhaustion and vulnerability, a grievance provides a sudden spike of artificial strength. It provides a perfectly clear story. They are wrong, and the self is right. That story is incredibly comforting. It removes all ambiguity. It requires no self-reflection. It is a thick, protective armor built out of memories. Energy is burned, feeding this familiar narrative. Hours are spent chewing on the same stale indignities. It is the exact same mechanism as eating food that is not really food. It is psychological junk. It tastes sharp and satisfying in the moment. It feeds a hunger for validation, but it provides zero actual nourishment. It leaves the internal architecture weaker than before. There is also the familiar habit of worry. Sitting still, allowing a cascade of terrifying future scenarios to wash over the mind. A disaster is imagined. A failure is visualized in vivid detail. The stomach drops. The pulse races. Why is this dark fantasy repeated every single night? Because worrying feels like preparation. There is a quiet, desperate belief that if the absolute worst is imagined, it can be controlled. If the tragedy is lived 100 times in the mind, it will not hurt as much if it actually arrives. It is a habit of suffering on purpose, just to avoid being surprised by suffering later. A bizarre, backwards attempt at feeling safe. Worrying feels productive. It feels like doing something. But nothing is actually moving. The gears are just grinding themselves down into dust. The habit of feeling unworthy. The habit of feeling disconnected. Even sadness can become a deeply comfortable room. If sadness is the room where most of a life has been lived, the wallpaper becomes familiar. The shape of the chair is known. Stepping outside into the sunlight feels blinding and terrifying. So the door is closed. The familiar, Heavy blanket of melancholy is pulled back over the shoulders. It hurts, but it is a known hurt, and the human system will almost always choose a known pain over an unknown possibility. This is the profound gravity of the loop. It promises safety through repetition. Eventually, the session comes to an end. The bottom of the container is reached. The screen finally goes dark. The mental argument runs out of steam. The distraction is exhausted, and the immediate aftermath sets in. The room is still quiet, but the quiet has changed. It is no longer just empty. It is polluted. There is a heavy physical residue left behind, a sluggishness in the blood, a dense fog wrapped around the forehead. The original pain, the original exhaustion is still there. Nothing has been solved. Nothing has been healed. But now, an extra layer of weight has been added on top. The weight of regret. A quiet, crushing shame begins to pool in the stomach, the realization that the machine won again. That awareness was abandoned for a cheap, temporary thrill. The promise from the morning lies broken on the floor. A harsh, critical voice wakes up. It begins to violently judge the weakness. It attacks the lack of discipline. It uses words that would never be spoken to a friend. And strangely, even this brutal self-criticism is part of the habit. It is the required payment at the end of the ride. By punishing the self, the debt feels settled. The slate feels wiped clean. The shame creates a powerful illusion of change. Feeling terrible about the habit tricks the mind into believing the habit has been conquered. And so a new promise is forged in the fire of that guilt. Tomorrow will be different. Tomorrow, pure discipline will reign. Tomorrow, the ideal version of the self will finally step forward and take the wheel, forever. The promise feels completely genuine. It feels clean. The relief of the new promise washes away the shame. The cycle closes. Sleep comes. The sun rises. The physical frame stands up and the day begins again. The exact same unseen friction starts rubbing against the nerves, the cold air, the unpredictable events, the tense conversations, the invisible, continuous draining of the reserves, 1,000 microscopic rejections of reality, until the evening arrives, and the tank is completely empty once more. The door is closed, the quiet returns, and the faint, familiar whisper begins again. A subtle restlessness in the hands. The cycle does not break because it is evil. It does not repeat because there is a fundamental flaw in the character. It repeats because it works. For a few fleeting seconds, it actually works. It successfully covers up the terrible, aching vulnerability of being alive. It builds a tiny, temporary fortress against the chaotic, overwhelming tide of the world. Inside the habit, nothing matters. Inside the indulgence, there are no expectations to meet. There is no uncertainty to navigate. There is only the perfect mechanical reliability of cause and effect. Press the button, receive the reward. Swallow the substance, alter the chemistry. Think the bitter thought, feel the spike of power. It is a flawlessly designed escape system. And as long as the primary experience of daily life is a desperate need to escape, the escape hatch will always be used. The problem is not the object of the habit. The object is just an incredibly effective tool for altering reality. The problem is the unbearable weight of the reality being fled from. The relentless, exhausting tension that builds up from the moment the eyes open. The habit is not a failure of willpower. It is an attempt at survival, a misguided, destructive attempt to find a moment of peace in a system that is constantly at war with itself, to try and force the habit to stop without looking at the internal war. Is like trying to stop a leak by yelling at the water. The pressure is still there. The water will simply find another crack. If one habit is forcibly shut down, another will immediately grow in its place. A dangerous substance might be traded for an obsession with perfectly clean eating. The object changes, but the desperate, gripping need for control remains identical. The exact same frantic energy, just wearing a more acceptable mask. Or a physical addiction might be traded for an addiction to being right. An endless, compulsive need to correct others, to dominate conversations, to constantly prove superior worth. The mechanism has not changed. The deep, hollow emptiness is still dictating every single move. It is all the same reaching, the same blind grasping in the dark for something, anything, to hold on to. Because to let go of the grasping means falling into the quiet, and the quiet is terrifying. In the empty spaces without distraction, all the buried grief begins to float to the surface. All the unmetabolized fear demands to be felt. The habit is the heavy lid kept firmly pressed down on the boiling pot. It requires massive amounts of energy to hold it there, and that energy is pulled directly from the life force, leaving the eyes dull, leaving the body heavy, leaving the connection to the world thin and fragile. The sensation of being trapped is incredibly real, because the cage is built out of the very things that feel like comfort. The bars are made of momentary pleasures. The locks are made of familiar routines. And the key is guarded by the deepest, most primal fear of facing what lies beneath the numbing. Notice what happens when the urge is resisted for just 1 minute. When the hand reaches out but is pulled back. The craving does not just quietly go away. It mutates. It becomes a physical heat. It creates an intense buzzing static in the brain. The mind begins to scream. It fabricates emergencies. It insists that if the indulgence is not granted immediately, something will shatter. The anxiety spikes to an agonizing level. This is the withdrawal of the anesthetic. This is the raw, unmedicated feeling of existence. It is the exact feeling that the entire automatic system is designed to avoid. Almost every time, the resistance crumbles. The relief of giving in is just too profound. The immediate silence that falls over the screaming mind is too precious to refuse. It feels like coming home. Even if home is a dark, suffocating room. Because it feels better to be numb in the dark than to be burning in the light. At least, that is the lie the machinery tells. And the machinery is incredibly convincing. It has been practicing for decades. It knows every weakness. It knows exactly which buttons to push to override the conscious will. It knows how to use exhaustion as a weapon. It waits patiently until the reserves are entirely depleted, and then it offers the easiest, softest way out. The cycle relies entirely on unconsciousness. It only functions in the shadows of awareness. The moment the action becomes a habit, it stops being observed. It becomes invisible. The food is eaten without being tasted. The screen is watched without being seen. The emotion is felt without being recognized as a choice. It is just something that happens. A purely mechanical reaction to a specific trigger, like a knee jerking when struck with a hammer. But beneath the mechanical reaction, there is a quiet tragedy occurring. The tragedy of pure potential energy being poured directly down the drain. Every single day, the same vital force that could be used to build something lasting is burned up just to maintain the baseline, just to keep the pain at a manageable level. It is an endless treadmill, running at full speed, sweating, fighting, exhausting the muscles, and ending up in the exact same spot every single night. The habit feels good because it is a momentary pause in the running. But it is also the thing that keeps the treadmill moving. The treadmill keeps turning. The fragile balance of numbing and surviving holds the days together. until something breaks the surface, until the carefully constructed routine is interrupted by the unpredictable world. A glass falls from the counter and shatters on the floor. An email arrives with a subtle tone of disrespect. Someone cuts in front of the line. A perfectly ordinary, minor inconvenience. But the reaction is not minor. The reaction is an explosion. Notice how the anger does not announce itself. It does not ask for permission to enter the room. It bypasses every logical thought. It skips over the rational mind completely. 1 second, the body is standing in the kitchen. The next, the chest is filled with boiling heat. The jaw locks. The hands curl inward. A sudden, violent surge of energy floods the system. Why does it happen so fast? Because the pressure has been building all day. The tank is empty of patience, but it is overflowing with unexpressed tension. The spilled glass is not just a spilled glass. It is the final drop of water in a dam that was already cracking. The mind is deeply unstable. It is constantly looking for a place to put all of its hidden discomfort. When a mistake happens, when something goes wrong, the tension finally has a target. It finally has permission to release. And so the anger takes over. It feels like being hijacked by a completely different person. The voice gets louder. The words become sharper. The words spoken in that heat are designed to cause damage. They are designed to transfer the internal pain onto someone or something else. Watch what happens to the eyes when the fury hits. The vision instantly narrows. The periphery of the room disappears. The context of the entire day vanishes. The only thing that exists is the source of the frustration. The mind gets tied up in an incredibly tight knot. It can only see through the burning lens of the anger. Everything else is entirely blacked out. If the anger is directed at a person, the transformation is terrifying. This is someone who has been loved. Someone who has done 100 good things. Someone who has supported and cared and listened. But the moment they say one wrong thing, all of it is erased. The mind flips entirely. It is an absolute all or nothing switch. They are no longer a friend or a partner. They are the enemy. Every flaw they have is suddenly magnified. Every past mistake they made is dragged up from the dark to be used as a weapon. The 100 good things hold zero weight against this one perceived failure. Why does the mind operate with such brutality? Because in that moment, seeing the other person's humanity feels too vulnerable. Understanding that they might just be tired, or clumsy, or confused, that would require an expansiveness that the exhausted system simply does not have. It is much easier to make them a villain. It requires less energy to hate them than to understand them. And the anger feels undeniably good. It feels like power. When the baseline is exhaustion and fear, anger is a sudden, intoxicating spike of strength. It makes the physical frame feel larger. It makes the small, fragile self feel suddenly invincible. It is a thick armor made of pure heat. For those few minutes, there is no sadness. There is no anxiety about the future. There is only the absolute certainty of being right. The absolute conviction that the world is wrong and the self is justified. It is deeply addictive. The mind craves that certainty. It craves the illusion of control that the fury provides. When everything feels unstable, anger is a solid wall to push against. But watch the fire closely. It burns incredibly hot, but it burns out fast. It is fueled by whatever fragments of life force were left in the reserves. It consumes everything in the room. When the shouting stops, when the object is broken, when the harsh text message is finally sent, the heat begins to dissipate, the armor falls off, and the reality of the room slowly returns. The vision widens again. The damage becomes visible. The shattered glass on the floor, the silence of the other person, the heavy, thick atmosphere in the air. The adrenaline drains out of the blood, and what is left behind is a devastating emptiness. The anger did not solve the underlying pain. It only burned down the immediate surroundings. Now the original exhaustion is back, but it is accompanied by a new, heavier burden, the deep, sinking weight of regret. The sudden realization of what was said, the sudden awareness of how it looked. The mind begins to desperately backpedal. It tries to construct a defense. It repeats the reasons why the anger was justified. It blames the other person for pushing the wrong buttons. It blames the stress of the job. It blames the lack of sleep. But beneath all the excuses, there is a quiet, aching truth. The machinery won again. The automatic reaction completely hijacked the wheel. There was no choice involved. It was a purely mechanical process. Pressure applied, explosion released, like a chemical reaction in a closed container, and nothing was actually protected. The relationships are now more fractured. The baseline of tension is now even higher. The environment is less safe than it was before the fire started. And yet, the very next time the pressure builds, the exact same sequence will play out. Because the anger is a protective shield for a wound that is never looked at. It is the aggressive guard dog standing at the door of a very dark room. As long as the dog is barking, no one can get close, not even the self. The external world is full of friction. The people in the world are complicated and messy. They will constantly say the wrong thing. They will constantly fail to meet the secret, silent expectations placed upon them. The weather will change. The plans will fall apart. The circumstances will always oscillate between acceptable and unacceptable. This is the endless motion of reality. If the internal system is completely rigid, every movement feels like an attack. If the mind demands that everything be exactly a certain way, it will live in a state of permanent war. And in a state of war, anger is the only logical response. It is the weapon drawn to force reality back into the preferred shape. But reality does not bend to the anger. The traffic does not clear because the steering wheel is struck. The past is not rewritten because it is screamed at. The only thing that bends is the internal structure of the person holding the rage. It slowly warps the architecture of the mind. It makes the reactions faster, sharper, more volatile. A person becomes a walking reservoir of boiling water, just waiting for a stranger to bump into them, waiting for a reason to finally let the valve burst, because holding it in feels impossible. When the heat rises, it feels like it will melt the bones if it is not expelled. It feels like survival. And the anger does not always shout. Sometimes it goes quiet. Sometimes it becomes a cold, freezing silence, a passive, bitter withdrawal from the world. The same boiling pressure is there, but instead of exploding, it implodes. The lips are pressed tightly together. The eyes refuse to make contact. The entire body becomes a rigid statue of punishment. This silent anger is just as destructive. It is a demand that the other person guess the source of the pain. It is a demand that the world fix the internal discomfort without a word being spoken. It drains the energy just as fast as the shouting. Hours are spent rehearsing the grievance in the dark theatre of the mind, perfecting the argument, waiting for the other person to finally realize their failure. But they rarely do, and the resentment only grows deeper. A heavy, toxic sludge sitting at the bottom of the stomach. If the anger is not directed outward, it turns around and attacks the self. The pendulum swings back with vicious force. The same brutal judgments meant for the outside world are applied internally. The mind attacks the body for its failures. It attacks the history for its mistakes. It becomes a quiet, simmering self-hatred that never rests. This is the exact same fire, just burning the house from the inside. The heat and the pressure are identical, whether it is screamed at a wall or whispered into a pillow. It is the same devastating expenditure of energy that could have been used to simply exist. Energy that could have been used to see the room as it actually is. But to see the room as it actually is, the armor has to be taken off. The guard dog has to be called away. And that means standing in the middle of the mess, completely exposed. It means feeling the sharp sting of a careless comment without instantly firing back. It means watching the glass shatter and just letting it be broken without needing it to be a symbol of a ruined life. It means allowing the uncomfortable sensation to just sit in the body, to let the heat rise and just watch it, without becoming it, without letting it grab the wheel. This requires an enormous, almost impossible amount of space, a profound expansiveness that feels utterly unnatural to an exhausted mind. Because to pause in that moment, to hold the fire without throwing it, feels like dying. It feels like letting the identity be completely crushed. When a criticism is received, the entire internal system screams for defense. It demands that the record be corrected immediately. It insists that the self must be protected at all costs. To simply hear the words and not react is an act of profound internal violence against the automatic machinery. It goes against every survival instinct the mind has built. The mind says, if you do not fight back, you will be destroyed. If you do not show your teeth, you will be consumed. And so the teeth are bared, the fire is spat out, and the cycle continues. The isolation deepens. The walls grow thicker. The relationships grow thinner, until there is nothing left but the anger and the exhaustion. A small, furious king ruling over a completely empty castle. The anger feels like an assertion of existence, a loud declaration of being alive and refusing to be ignored. But it is actually the loudest sign of absence, because in the moment of pure rage, nobody is really home. The conscious observer is completely gone. The human being has checked out. What remains is just a mechanical program playing out a sequence it learned a long time ago. A sequence of pain transferred. Pain received, transformed into heat and projected outward. A desperate attempt to not have to carry the weight. But the weight is never truly handed off. It just bounces off the walls and returns heavier than before. Notice how the body feels right now. Just remembering the last time the vision narrowed. The muscles in the shoulders tighten slightly. The breathing shifts into a shallower rhythm. The body cannot tell the difference between the memory and the reality. It is always braced for the next impact, always waiting for the next spark to hit the dry brush. It is an incredibly painful way to navigate the world, being constantly moving between the numbness of the habit and the burning of the rage. A pendulum swinging wildly between dead silence and deafening noise. Never finding the center, never finding the quiet ground where things can just be exactly as they are, without needing to be fixed, without needing to be destroyed. The tragedy is not that the anger happens. The tragedy is how deeply convincing it is, how perfectly it disguises itself as the absolute truth. When the vision narrows, the mind truly believes that the narrow window is the entire universe. It believes that the conflict is the most important thing that has ever existed. It forgets the sky. It forgets the vast, quiet passing of time. It forgets the simple, fragile humanity of the person standing across the room. It reduces everything to a brutal, microscopic point of friction. And in that tiny, suffocating space, a life is slowly worn away. The fire has burned out. The room is quiet again. A profound realization settles into the dust. The old way is no longer survivable. The endless swinging between the numbing distraction and the burning rage cannot continue. The physical frame is simply too tired. So, a decision is made. A line is drawn on the floor. The next time the pressure rises, there will be no escape. The next time the friction hits, the escape hatch will remain closed. It sounds simple. A quiet, noble promise made in the aftermath of exhaustion. But watch what happens when the moment actually arrives. Watch the reality of what change actually requires. An ordinary afternoon. A sudden spike of anxiety arrives in the chest, or a wave of heavy, crushing sadness, or the sharp sting of a perceived insult. The automatic machinery instantly wakes up. It reaches for the lever. It prepares to deploy the anger, or the food, or the screen, or the endless mental argument. But the hand is pulled back. The action is stopped. The lever is not pulled. For the first time in years, the thing is simply allowed to sit in the room, and the result is immediate terror. It does not feel peaceful. It does not feel like a spiritual awakening. It feels like stepping into a furnace. The temperature in the physical frame immediately begins to rise, because the energy that was always thrown outward or forcefully pushed downward now has nowhere to go. It is trapped inside the container of the body. The pressure builds. It pushes against the back of the eyes. It creates a frantic, buzzing static in the ears. The mind begins to sound an alarm. It insists that a terrible mistake has been made. It screams that this discomfort is dangerous. This is the heat of the internal laboratory. The profound, intense friction of staying awake when every instinct demands sleep. The mind will use every trick it has gathered over a lifetime. It will construct brilliant, flawless arguments for why the old habit is absolutely necessary right now. It will say that this one time does not matter. It will say that the tension is too high, that it will cause physical damage if it is not released. It will weaponize the exhaustion. It will offer a tiny, sweet taste of relief, just a fraction of an inch away. To sit still in the face of that temptation, to feel the burning desire to move and deliberately remain motionless, is an act of immense internal violence against the automatic system. The system was built to survive by reacting, and now the reacting is forbidden. It feels like suffocating. Notice how the physical environment suddenly feels unbearably close. The texture of the clothing against the skin feels harsh. The sound of a clock ticking becomes a deafening hammer. The entire nervous system is raw, exposed to the air without its usual thick coat of armor. This is why it is so deeply uncomfortable. The armor was heavy and it caused immense pain, but it also protected the soft tissue underneath. Taking it off means feeling every single degree of the temperature. It means feeling the full, unfiltered impact of being alive. A memory arises, an old regret carrying a heavy, dense weight. Normally it would be instantly deflected, buried under a distraction or burned up in a flash of defensiveness. But now it is allowed to land. The weight of it settles entirely on the shoulders. There is a desperate urge to run, to stand up, to pace the room, to make a phone call, to consume something, anything. Because facing the raw reality of the past without any filter feels like being crushed. The chest tightens, the throat closes, the eyes sting. The discomfort is not just psychological. It is a visceral, mechanical pressure, like a heavy stone being placed directly onto the lungs. This is the accumulated weight of 1,000 avoided moments. Every time a difficult feeling was pushed away, every time a pain was numbed. It did not disappear. It was simply stored in the dark. And now the door to the dark has been opened. all of that stored energy is rushing back into the center of the room. It demands to be felt. It demands to be finally processed. And it must be processed through the physical frame, bond through the beating of the heart and the shallow pulling of the breath. The mind insists that this feeling is permanent, that if the grief is allowed in, it will never leave, that if the fear is truly felt, it will completely consume the identity. The illusion of permanence is the greatest trick the machinery plays. It says, this burning will last forever. Therefore, an escape must be found immediately. But if the escape hatch remains closed, if the feet stay planted on the floor, something extraordinary begins to happen deep within the heat. The boiling tension reaches a peak. The trembling in the hands hits its maximum frequency. The urge to react screams at an unbearable volume. And then, it begins to break apart. The dense, terrifying wall of discomfort starts to crack. It does not last forever. It was never permanent. It was only a wave, a temporary alignment of passing elements, a massive surge of energy moving through a narrow channel. If the channel remains open and the observer remains still, the energy simply passes through. The heat burns away the heavy residue and leaves something cleaner behind. But reaching that clearing requires passing directly through the center of the fire. There is no path around it. There is no shortcut that bypasses the burning. Every attempt to find a shortcut is just a return to the old machinery. Why does it feel like dying? Because a death is actually taking place. The identity that was built around the suffering is being dismantled. The version of the self that needed the anger to feel strong. The version that needed the numbing to feel safe. That version is suffocating in the heat of the new awareness. And it will fight for its life. It will drag up every terrifying scenario to convince the hands to reach for the old comfort. It will insist that the self is nothing without its defenses. It will say that the world will crush a frame that stays this open. There is a profound mourning in letting go of a destructive habit, because even though it was poison, it was a familiar poison. It was a companion in the dark. It provided a predictable rhythm in a chaotic universe. Saying goodbye to it means stepping into a completely empty space, an unknown territory where nothing is guaranteed. The silence of this new space is initially terrifying. There is no background noise to drown out the subtle aches of existence. When the mind stops spinning its endless stories of resentment and fear, what is left? Just the sound of the breath, just the sensation of the clothes resting on the shoulders, just the incredibly fragile reality of being a human being standing alone in a room. It feels far too small. It feels insufficient to meet the massive demands of the outside world. The old armor made the body feel huge. Now there is only the bare skin. The vulnerability is staggering. Someone speaks a harsh word. Without the automatic shield of anger, the word simply enters. It lands directly in the soft tissue of the chest. It actually hurts. The impulse to instantly throw the hurt back at them is immense. The muscles tense, preparing to return fire. But the new commitment holds the line. The return fire is cancelled. The hurt is allowed to just be hurt. A sharp, clean pain instead of a massive, messy explosion. It is deeply uncomfortable to just be hurt, to not turn it into a story of victimhood, to not use it as fuel for a bitter crusade, to simply let the sensation burn for a moment and then slowly fade. It feels like a defeat to the old mind. It feels like losing the battle, but the energy that is saved is immense. The massive amount of life force that would have been burned in the resulting war is kept inside the body. The container remains sealed. This is the true work of changing. Holding the intensely uncomfortable elements without letting them spill over. Watching the tension and the fear and the sadness collide internally, watching the storm rage inside the chest, and doing absolutely nothing to stop it, to fix it, or to escape it, just providing the quiet, vast space for the storm to blow itself out. It takes a terrifying amount of patience, a willingness to sit in the dark, feeling terrible without demanding immediate light. The culture outside demands instant relief. Every billboard, every screen, every voice promises a quick fix for the discomfort. Take this and the ache will ease. Buy this and the emptiness will vanish. To sit in the center of the emptiness and refuse the cure is to completely step out of the normal human rhythm. It feels incredibly lonely. There is no applause for simply enduring an afternoon without numbing the mind. There is no medal for feeling the anxiety and not letting it dictate an email. It is an entirely invisible struggle, fought quietly behind the eyes, fought in the subtle tightening of the jaw that is slowly relaxed, fought in the hands that are deliberately kept open instead of curled into fists. No one else knows the heat of that specific fire. And there are failures. Many, many failures. The pressure becomes too high, the exhaustion is too deep. The hand reaches out, the word is spoken, the old cycle clicks back into place. The immediate aftermath of a failure brings a new, sharper kind of pain, because the numbness no longer works the way it used to. The awareness has grown too sharp. The distraction is now seen clearly for what it is. It tastes like ash. The mechanical nature of the habit is no longer hidden in the shadows. It happens under bright lights, and that makes it deeply humiliating. The critical voice returns, louder than ever. It uses the failure as proof that change is completely impossible. It whispers that the old way is the only way, that it is better to just surrender to the sleep, to the automatic reacting, because trying to wake up simply hurts too much. This is the heaviest pressure of all, the pressure of disappointment in the self, the heavy, crushing weight of returning to the starting line again and again. But even this disappointment must be held in the fire. Even the shame must be allowed to burn without being turned into a new identity. The mind wants to build a permanent home in the failure. It wants to declare that the weakness is permanent. The uncomfortable work is to look at the failure, feel the burning sting of it, and then simply take the next breath, to step back into the quiet room, to close the door again, and to wait for the next surge, knowing it will come, knowing that the friction of the world will never stop rubbing against the nerves. The people will always be complicated. The weather will always change. The expectations will always be broken. The goal is not to find a life without friction. A life without friction is a fantasy sold to tired minds. The goal is to stop being destroyed by the friction, to stop being hollowed out by the constant, desperate resistance to what is actually happening. It is agonizing to stop resisting, to let the heavy rain simply be heavy rain without fighting the sky, to let the physical pain simply be a sensation without adding a massive story of tragedy to it, to let the fear of the future simply vibrate in the blood without mistaking it for the absolute truth. It feels like dropping a shield in the middle of a battlefield. It requires a trust that the naked skin can somehow survive the impact. And surprisingly it does. As the days of holding the fire turn into weeks, the heat begins to change its quality. The panic that used to accompany the discomfort begins to thin out. The body learns that it can hold a massive amount of tension without breaking. The nervous system slowly realizes that an uncomfortable feeling is not an emergency. It is just weather. A storm moving through the valley of the physical frame. The vision begins to widen permanently. The microscopic lens of anger and fear loses its grip. The room expands. The awareness begins to notice the silent space between the objects, between the thoughts. The exhausting, all-or-nothing judgments start to lose their weight. A mistake is just a mistake. An insult is just a string of words falling out of a tired person's mouth. The immense, tangled knots of the mind slowly begin to loosen, not because they were solved, but because they were finally starved of the energy used to maintain them. The discomfort of change is the price of admission to reality. The old habits were a thick pane of distorted glass. They made the world look manageable, but they kept it entirely distant. Shattering the glass means the wind comes rushing in. It is cold. It is entirely unpredictable. It carries the scent of decay and the scent of blooming at the exact same time. It is overwhelmingly real, and there is no going back to the sleep. Once the eyes have truly opened to the mechanical nature of the suffering, the sleep is ruined forever. The comfort of the cage is gone. There is only the open air, and the slow, unsteady process of learning how to breathe it. Every moment becomes a quiet choice between feeding the familiar, heavy machinery of the past, or standing completely still in the uncomfortable burning fire of the present, and letting it slowly clear the way